Welcome to Turning Tuesday. I'm Reese, and this week I'm turning metal. So, bit of backstory here. While we're in Ararat, specifically while I was turning this nice 12-inch piece of red gum burl, I was creating quite a bit of vibrations, and it wasn't until a little bit later in the turning, so I was only just starting to rough it out, that something happened. You notice there on the left-hand side of the screen, something jumped off.
Oh no!
Oh no, oh no indeed.
What's happened?
So Jeff heard me say oh no, came over, checked out what was going on, and the thingamabob was gone. So, after a bit of research and figuring out what had actually happened, it turns out the panel mount screw on the potentiometer on the Woodfast WL1220A is only about 1.5 mil long, and it's enough for about a thread and a half to make contact on the potentiometer. And so I had a concept of doing an extended nut. So I've seen extended nuts before, and I knew it was possible, but I tried to reach out to one of the places in Canberra that do specialised fasteners called SpecFast, and while they're usually pretty good, they told me everything about this was non-standard and they wouldn't be able to help. So I ended up going and grabbing a piece of 12mm brass round rod, grabbed it in a set of jaws, and went into Total Tools and grabbed the cheapest combo kit of caps and dies. And just so happened, one of those was the correct one. So the potentiometer used in this uses an M7 fine thread, so that is a 0.75 pitch, and luckily enough, comes in the cheapest kit possible. So, bit of brass, and I'm just using the back of the tailstock here, just as a flat surface to reference and get those bites started. Because once it's started, it should stay fairly straight. So I got it in there, put a little bit of oil in there, or a bit of lube, and got it in a bit deeper. So I went in, came out, went in, came out, and just made sure everything threaded really nicely. As you saw, it just came out, got rid of some of the shavings that were inside there. And I'm now at the point where I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure I am far enough down. So I'll spin her out and give her a test fit. So I just happen to have a couple of spare potentiometers laying around from when I had to replace it after Pambula. Perfect. Thread works nicely. Now, I ended up making two in this process. And first thing I wanted to do was just use the skew and true it up. Now, something I noticed while turning this brass is that if I have my tool up, it tears out a lot. If I put my tool underneath, it cuts really nicely. Beautiful shavings come off. So it was an interesting one to discover. Anyway, so I'm just going to hand spin here and set the overall length for what I'm after, because the end product is only about 3.5 mil long. So it's about 3 times the length of the original. And I knew the end wasn't perfectly round, so I just marked off the end where I'll be able to clean it up a bit more. And I've marked about 6 mil in between, which is where I'm just going to work it down. Now, the only tool that I had that was the right size to get in that gap was a parting tool. So this is a diamond parting tool, and as you can see, I'm just using the corners. I'm just rocking back and forth and just working it down because if I just used the face straight on, it didn't want to do it. Anyway, gone over, given it a quick sharpen. This whole process took about 40 minutes. I've cut the video down because metal on metal, it's pretty horrible noises, so I didn't want everyone to be experiencing that. And I have jumped around a bit. So, first measurement I took was the size of the current nut, which is about 10 mil. And I wanted to make sure I was at least that small because I wanted to go underneath and down the hole. Now, I haven't put a hex head on this one, but as you'll see towards the end, I did enough. And it is not going anywhere. Give it a little measure, and we're almost there. As you can see, I've got my hand raised quite high there, and I am getting some little shavings coming off instead of just dust. Very, very close. A little bit more. Banjo decided to loosen off a little bit and tighten that up. Off we go again. And almost. As you can see, the tip of the tool is under the curvature of the actual brass barrel. Because, as I said, it did seem to cut a lot smoother on the underside than it did coming from above. Right, so we've definitely got the measurements. And then I was like, yep, that's good, that's the nut size. Now I need to take it down a bit more. I didn't really care how far I took it down as long as it was smaller. As you can see, quite a few shavings coming off there. So just here, I'm grabbing my calipers. I've set it to about 8 mil. And I'm just taking it down so that it goes inside there. And yeah, just wanted to make sure it goes inside the hole. Now I'm just sanity checking the numbers, making sure everything's fine. And yep, looking pretty good. So what I'm going to do now is just mark where I'm going to part it off. Just eyeballing pretty close to center.
Alright, continue.
And before I continue, just wanted to double check I hadn't crushed the end. Oh, yep, she's crushed. Had a feeling that might have been the case. Get the tap out, just find the other threads again, and just give it a little touch up. Didn't go in very far. And Bob's your uncle. First one here, just doing it with the parting tool. Brown cryo parting tool. And give it a little bit of speed. Jumps off. Straight down, off we go. Now, I'm about to do something that is very dangerous. I have the blade in the saw reversed so that it can turn towards me and still cut. But it is not a recommended practice to do that on your lathe. It works, but it's not recommended. So, know your own risks. For me, I knew brass is fairly soft and it probably wasn't going to catch. If it did, it probably would have done more damage to the metal than the actual blade. So, for me, in my specific use case, I was comfortable doing that. I don't usually do that on wood, and I definitely haven't done that on metal before. But I understood the risks before I did anything. Just giving it a final check, and just putting some square sides on, and double checking they still work with the threads as I go. So flatten off the ends, give it a test, send the sandpaper flowing, and finish it up. I'll give the second one another test, just to make sure everything is all good. Didn't damage any of the threads while I was pressing it against there. Sure didn't. Everything's working fine. And as you can see, speed controller goes on perfectly over the top.
Yep, it's fitted. That's not coming off of there. Very nice.
As you can see, just a few more threads there to hold on nice and secure. Thank you for watching, and I hope you've been inspired to go and do something.